Welcome to the mother of all talk shows, coming to you by telephone across the Atlantic Ocean to New York and the tri-state area.
People of America, this is the President of the United States. You are listening to George Galloway and the mother of all talk shows. George is a Scotsman, unlike me, an Irishman. Enjoy.
Well, he still is the President of the United States, but it's heating up, huh? The polls are narrow. Although, from this side of the Atlantic, if ever the unsuitability of that big plank of wood, Mitt Romney, to be the President of the United States was in doubt, well, that doubt has been dispelled over the last few days. Carl Lewis, the legendary American sprinter, put it better than the acres of newsprint that I have seen from both sides of the Atlantic about Romney's parade of calamities, Romney's stumbling and falling into one elephant trap after another on his overseas tour. Carl Lewis said some Americans just shouldn't be allowed to go abroad. I think that Mitt Romney is one of those Americans. What do you say? How is it playing there? I don't know even if it's being reported properly there. But I can tell you that his visit to Britain, which is ruled by a political party in great empathy with his own, the Conservative Party and the Republican Party, are sisters under the skin, but the insults, the calamitous, clumsy, vulgar insults that Mitt Romney delivered to the United Kingdom over the Olympics and other matters, whilst a guest in the United Kingdom, and hours before he met the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, making it impossible for David Cameron, the Prime Minister, to do other than reproach him in the most bitter terms. Well, it's extraordinary. If that's how Mitt Romney treats his best allies, what's the rest of the world in for if we get this man so wooden that the birds are nesting in him as President of the United States? Discuss. I want to hear from you. And then, of course, Romney went on to what they call Israel, and he gave a green light to the hawkish Benjamin Netanyahu to launch yet another war in the Middle East region, this time against Iran. If Israel decides to attack Iran, said Romney, I will respect that. Well, when you're paying for it, armoring it, when you have made it possible politically and diplomatically, I suppose it's logic that you would respect that. But trust me, it will also be logic for you to be held jointly and severally responsible for it. So if any listeners out there think that in some way you're neutral in this, that neutrality has just been dispelled. And if Israel attacks Iran, it will be the United States attacking Iran. If Iranians are harmed and killed and torn apart by razor-sharp, red-hot shards of steel and sheets of flying glass, well, Americans will be too, undoubtedly, because one of the things which I had hoped that your people had learned is that nothing has no consequences, and that if you hurt people on the other side of the world, some of them will try to hurt you back. That's not to wish it to be so, that's merely to state the obvious. Again, discuss. And what about the Olympic Games? China's doing well, huh? How many golds have they got now? How many medals have China got now? And what about the gratuitous, grotesque insult from elements of the United States Olympic team insulting the Chinese wonder girl after her wonderful swimming performance? Well, I can tell you from the Chinese point of view, it's gone down like a very heavy lead balloon. It was a very big mistake to insult China in this way. Indeed, please note, dear listeners, it is now a big mistake to insult China, period. Discuss these and other matters. You can call me on the Mother of All Talk Shows on 212-209-2900. And Ife, without whom, as always, we wouldn't even have a show, such as the show is, by telephone line. I again apologize for that. Ife is taking your calls on 212-209-2900. And maybe, just maybe, she's got one on the line for me now. Ife, do you have a caller?
Yes, you have Vic from New Jersey.
Vic in New Jersey, welcome to the show. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, Vic, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, Vic, you're on the line. You're on the air. Go on.
I'm not sure if he's...
We seem to have lost that one.
Yeah,
Why don't you give me another?
I don't know if he hears you. Okay, so you have David D. from Brooklyn.
David D. in Brooklyn. Welcome to the show, David.
Yes, very nice to talk with you. I did speak to you at the Ethical Culture. I don't know if you remember, we talked about the death penalty and my experience on a canard ship where there were many British people cheering for the death penalty.
Yes, I do recall. I have a very good memory. I'm not sure if it's a blessing or a curse.
Yes. What I want to talk to you about today is the situation in the Middle East. I was told by someone that after the Arab Spring began in Tunisia, that in Saudi Arabia, the king and the other royal kleptocrats over there did something in Saudi Arabia to kind of calm the people down by giving certain benefits and whatnot.
Yes, they gave lots of money away, yes.
Yes, I'd like to find out exactly what happened. What did they give away?
They gave away $10,000. We shouldn't really say give away, should we, David? Because they only gave the people back their own money that they had stolen from them in the first place.
I say, so everybody got $10,000?
$10,000, yes.
Oh, that is really something.
That won't last
maybe
long,
if you
though.
have
It's
a little
already been
time,
spent,
you could
and the people
explain
are arrested
how those royals got those positions in the first place in that area. Most of those places were under imperial domination and colonial control at one time. And essentially, how did they get positions like that, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and so forth?
Well, some of them took them by sword, and the Al Saud family are a case in point of that. They captured the country from the British puppet Hashemite family, the ones who now rule Jordan.
Yes.
And they made a strategic alliance with the United States against the British Empire. And that's how the Al Saud family kleptocracy came to be. And now it is more than 30,000 male princes. God knows how many females. Let's assume the same amount. So let's assume a royal family of 60,000 people, each of whom receives not $10,000, but $20,000 per day of every year of their entire lives. And of course, the most senior rulers have the treasury at their disposal. Hence, as Michael Moore revealed in the wonderful film Fahrenheit 9/11, this kleptocracy has invested $3 trillion in the American Stock Exchange and another $3 trillion in the American banks. And, of course, undreamt of hundreds of billions of dollars on arms contracts to feed the corporate welfare system, whereby the military-industrial complex is given money, the complex gives money to the political system delivers back more goodies for the military-industrial complex. So it's a deeply corrupt and disgusting relationship, and it has been born of violence, of the sword. Other rulers in the area, like Bahrain next door, for example, they were mere British stooges. They were placed on the throne of Bahrain, which was declared an independent country by the British. It has no claim to independence at all. It's the size of a very large parking lot and lies connected by a causeway to what they call Saudi Arabia.
I see.
And the people of Bahrain had this royal family imposed upon them more than 2 centuries ago. But that doesn't mean lots of different generations. If I tell you that the current Prime Minister of Bahrain became the Prime Minister in 1960 when John Kennedy was first elected as President of the United States, the current Prime Minister of Bahrain was placed in his office, not elected, of course, but placed in his office based on his family dynasty. And he's still the Prime Minister today. So what's that? 52 years later. So he came to be Prime Minister before the Beatles were born, and the Beatles are 40 years dead, and he's still the Prime Minister. Nice work if you can get it, David, huh?
All right. Kuwait is in the same situation then.
Yes, Kuwait is in the same situation. They were carved out of Iraq and created as an independent kingdom by the British and another of these ruling tribal chiefs, the Al-Sabah family, were placed in power. And get this, David,
yes.
Every single member of the Kuwaiti government is from the same family, has the same name, Al-Sabah. Everyone. Now, that's a family business, yeah?
Yes,
but
yes.
More like the Corleone family business.
I see. Well, looking forward to seeing you again, George.
God willing, I'll be there soon. David, thanks for that call.
Thank you, George.
This is the mother of all talk shows. This is George Galloway, by telephone, from across the Atlantic, talking to WBAI.
This is the President of the United States. Yes, I promised you change. Change you could believe in. Well, here it is. George Galloway and the mother of all talk shows.
Well, he is still the president, but is he going to be the president in November? Or are you going to deliver this stiff, this big palooka, this block of wood, this man so wooden that in whom the birds are nesting? Are you going to elect him as the president? I'm only saying, I'm a foreigner, but I do have an interest in this matter. 212-209-2900, that's the number to call to join the great debate, to join the mother of all talk shows, and Ife, who handles everything with such aplomb, such unflappability, such panache, such wisdom. See, I'm trying to butter her up again. I nearly dropped the ball earlier. Go ahead, Ife, do we have another?
Yes, you have Dee from Newark.
Dee in Newark, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hi, good morning. Good morning to you, Mr. Galloway, and good morning to Ms. Brown. Thank you for taking my call. If the Twit hasn't left your area over there, maybe you need to hold him up a little bit and do us all a big favor here, please.
He's a frightening guy, I think.
But
I'll tell you why I think he's frightening, not because his views are all that different from President Obama's on some key issues. But
I understand that, but I also think that there's differences that will make a difference in the everyday and average American life, as well as people abroad. I'm not saying that President Obama is a panacea. I understand the ruling class that he also is serving. But more importantly, with your last caller's talk and what's going on globally, where do you think this is all going? And I'm going to hang up and listen to your response in terms of the election, in terms of the economy, in terms of the environment.
So. The first thing that needs to be said is that only God knows where it's going. There are things that we don't know, which we should know, which we have a right to know, which may be going on in the background, and only the rulers truly know them. So I'm taking an educated guess. Educated not in any university, because I never attended one, but educated in 40 years or more of deep involvement in international politics, and in particular in the Middle East region. There's a very real danger that the United States stroke Israel, and I insist upon this refusal to make a dichotomy where none exists. Israel is the United States, and the United States is Israel in this regard, that they will attack the Islamic Republic of Iran. And if they do, as I've said many times, it will be the biggest mistake in history. Secondly, it's quite evident that the United States, notwithstanding all its experience, and I'm talking to New York above all on this, is in bed with Al-Qaeda again, this time in Syria. Al-Qaeda is moving from all parts of the globe to fight this jihad in Syria, again with American weapons, American money, either direct or indirect through the satrapies hitherto referred to, Saudi Arabia and Qatar in this regard. The jihad, the Al-Qaeda jihad, has moved to Syria. And what was, in Leon Panetta's words a year ago, a flicker of Al-Qaeda in the Syrian insurgency is now ablaze. And the United States seems perfectly content to do so. They don't seem to, in any way, be anxious about it. Although, I've got to tell you, I think the day will come, and remember you heard it here, that you will have reason to be very anxious about it indeed. The New York Times this week told us that the Islamist fundamentalist groups have broken away from the so-called Free Syrian Army. Now there's a surprise. Frankenstein's monster acting like a monster has broken away from them and is now out of control of the so-called Free Syrian Army, which itself was not under anyone's control other than the paymasters. So what's going to happen in Syria? Well, if this Al-Qaeda-led and inspired civil war in Syria leads to a victory for the revanchists, then we have a very dangerous and unstable Middle East all over again. The Palestinians, meanwhile, have been completely forgotten. They haven't been on the agenda for a year and a half. Their leadership seems incapable of getting themselves back onto the agenda. Israel has no worries from them, and why should it? One half of the Palestinian resistance has effectively joined the jihad against not Israel, but against the state which harbored them, fed them, and armed them, and organized them this last 20 years past. So good luck with that, Mr. Hamas. Good luck with that, the Palestinian resistance. I think it's utterly immoral what you have done, and moreover, the wages of immorality are seldom happiness. So it's a very dangerous situation that we have, even just in the Middle East. But if we talk about the world economic situation, we are now in a double-dip recession. Properly, in most parts of the country, it can be called a depression. It's certainly the worst economic outlook since the 1930s depression. And I understand that the figures in the United States have begun to go south also. So we have, on a political and an economic level, a pretty catastrophic vista, and we are ruled by men, mainly men, though Mrs. Clinton is an exception, at least in terms of gender, but probably in no other respect. We are ruled by men and a few women who don't appear to know that we're headed for the cliff and the abyss. That's my point of view, and I want to hear yours on 212-209-2900. That's 212-209-2900. Aoife, do we have another caller?
Yes, you have Jane from White Plains, New York.
Jane in White Plains, welcome.
Good morning, George.
Hi.
I'm calling because I sort of wanted to take a quick poll, but I'm alarmed about talk about defunding the U.S. Post Office, which apparently is one of the things that was put into the Constitution, that we had a right to have a post office to encourage, the exchange of commerce and all that.
Yes.
And I was just wondering, does Great Britain have a post office run by the government?
Well, we do, Jane, but not very much longer. Many aspects of the British Post Office have already been privatized. The private companies, particularly TNT, I don't know if you're familiar with that multinational,
I didn't hear it,
have been allowed to cherry-pick some of the best services, some of the few services which can wash their face economically, and leaving a husk of a postal service in the hands of the government. Indeed, it's called the Royal Mail. So it's not just the government, it's the Queen whose head is on the side of all the trucks and the post office buildings and the pillar boxes where you post your letters and so on. But that is not for very much longer. the government is planning to privatize even those remaining parts of the public postal service. And you're right, the idea of a postal service was a progressive, indeed revolutionary idea. And it allowed someone in White Plains to, at least it did in Britain, I don't know if it happened in America, but let me tell you what happened in Britain. Somebody in London could send a letter to John O'Groats in the far north of the country for the same price as somebody could send a letter from one street in one city to the next street in the next in the next street in the same city. And those letters would be delivered without fail next day to rich and poor alike. No first class, second class, 10th class service. And it was indispensable in the development of modern society. Of course, everything has changed. Nowadays, I can tell you as a member of parliament, whereas when I was first elected as a member of parliament 25 years ago, there was no mobile phones, no internet, no fax even. Nothing had been invented. And I received 100, 150 postal letters, paper mail a day. Now I receive hundreds of emails per day, mobile calls, texts, and still even occasionally faxes, though faxes have come and gone since then, but hardly any paper mail. So undoubtedly the business has changed. I don't know why the post office didn't stay ahead or even abreast of those changes. I don't know why the post office, for example, didn't monopolize the provision that Google and Hotmail and Yahoo and so on do today. They could have. They were already in that communications business. So it's probably quite a similar tale, Jane, to the one you're talking
George.
about.
Are you able to hear it?
Yes, Jane, can you hear me?
Barely. I don't know what happened to my phone, but you became very faint. But I wanted to, my part two is that if someone steals your mail, your U.S. mail, it is a federal offense. And I have to say that there's this part of me that thinks that one reason why they're trying to take down the post office is to take away what would be protection for all American citizens that receive mail. And
well, I very much doubt that.
Alarms me dreadfully.
I think the answer is very much more prosaic. That answer is dollars and cents, either to be made or to be saved as a state expense. But Jane, thanks for the call. Aoife, do we have another?
Yes, you have Eric. Eric from the Lower East Side.
Eric in the Lower East Side, welcome. Go on, Eric.
Hello.
Yeah, go on. You're on the air.
Hold on. Hello. How you doing?
Yes, Eric. Hi.
I think the woman is totally right. Once you privatize the post office, your mail is subject to anyone to take a look at it. You have no privacy in your mail.
I would have thought that already was the case. But anyway, go on. I'll not argue about that.
To loot another institution out of $70 billion they have to pay in 10 years, it's a war against the poor and middle class. You know this.
Yes,
and I have something else to show you. See, people should look at the House Joint Resolution HJR 192 back in 1933. It's set off debt.
Yep.
And look at what's going on in this world right now. You'll see that it's time for either like mass revolt or for the United Kingdom and to take back the United States and spank it behind and
yeah, well, I don't see either of those things happening as yet, but I'm working for it, Eric. There were some signs of revolt in the United Kingdom and the United States in the last few months, the Occupy movement and other manifestations, but it all seems to have gone a bit quiet, no?
I think we lost him.
Okay. Give me another, Aoife.
Okay, well, Vic, who we lost earlier, from New Jersey, is back.
Hi, Vic. Welcome to the show. Go ahead.
Yes, actually, I'm also having a little bit of problems hearing you. Your voice is very faint, but I will go on. Two things. The first, in reference to your discussion about the Middle East, do the Israelis, is there any popular movement there going on where these people recognize that, in fact, if there is a war, they will be the first victims, that, in fact, their government is really not looking out for their populace's best interest in this? And also, I'm wondering, Mr. Galloway, if you've ever had a chance to listen and to view the documentary video, experts speak out about the 9/11 demolition of the World Trade Center.
Yeah, I've seen all I want to see or need to see, but I'm always open to people sending me things. So if you want to send me something, please do. Feel free. You can do that. You can follow me on Facebook, George Galloway MP. Follow me on Twitter at George Galloway, or you can email me at gallowayg@parliament.uk, and we'll do our best to keep abreast of everything that's going on. I've also started my own channel on YouTube, which is called Molucca Red, MOLUCCA, second word Red, and I've done two weekly podcasts. They're going fantastically well, and 75% of the viewers are from the United States. So clearly there's a market for what I've got to say in the United States, and clearly podcasts are the way to do it. So do check them out. I've done two already, one on love, George Galloway on love, and the second on pirates, George Galloway on pirates. So do check them out and do mail me. Of course there are people in in Israel who are against war and indeed against justice. And those are amongst the bravest people on the earth, because right in the front line, they are maintaining their vigils, maintaining their conscience, in many cases maintaining their Judaic faith, because, of course, Zionism has nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with Judaism. And these people deserve our absolute respect and support and love and prayers, and from me they have all of these and more. But it would be a mistake to overestimate their number. They are very few in number. I know that because I spent many years amongst them, in Shankin Street, in Dizengoff Square, in Tel Aviv, and around the university and so on. I know a very large number of these people, and that's the problem. I know a very large percentage of them because they are small in number. Now, there are some signs of economic revolt in Israel against Netanyahu's neocon economic policies, but I'm afraid that revolt does not stretch to a belief in the injustice that the Palestinians have suffered and the need to redress it. Thanks for that. In New Jersey, I think it was. Let's see if Ife has another call. Go ahead, Ife.
Yes, you have George from Manhattan.
George in Manhattan, welcome to the show, sir.
Yes, you mentioned that the British had some influence in terms of the other kingdoms like Saudi Arabia and so on. What are the British people? How do they feel about paying $2 a year to your present monarch, who, for all intents and purposes, is really irrelevant in the 21st century? In that, their function is really not very useful, because all she does is give speeches, prepared speeches, and cut ribbons at places, and her entire family is endowed with large sums of money with their castles and so on and so forth. So what do the British people feel about giving their taxpayers money, and what if they refuse to pay that money to support these plutocrats?
Well, I think the first thing that they feel is that these issues that you raise, which are nonetheless valid, are amongst the least of their worries. I would have thought that they're far more worried about the fact that they are paying $80 billion to maintain a new generation of nuclear weapons, for example, which are equally useless, in fact far more useless than the Queen, and can never be used for any purpose except national suicide and self-incineration. I think that the British are far more preoccupied with other matters, and insofar as they give a thought to the monarchy, they probably rather like it. The Queen is an anodyne and a fairly pleasant personality who doesn't do anybody any harm that anyone can see. And every country needs a head of state. And sometimes when we see elected heads of state, we are glad that we don't have one. For example, in the long period, when first the father, then the son, in the Bush dynasty, ruled the United States as elected monarchs, we were probably quite grateful for our own. And when we look at Mitt Romney, who might be your elected monarch very soon, God forbid, they probably also are glad that they've got Her Majesty the Queen. So I really don't think it's a huge issue at all. She has purely ceremonial purposes. The crimes that are committed by the British state are not committed by her; they're committed by the elected government. So that would be my reflections on that point. Thanks for that call. This is the mother of all talk shows. This is George Galloway on WBAI, serving New York and the tri-state area via IFE on 212-209-2900. If you want to call, just join in.
Fighting the golden flakes of change with the milk of human kindness. This is the mother of all talk shows, and George Galloway.
Mr. President, that made no sense whatsoever.
I know. That's why I said it.
That didn't mean anything. Which much of the rhetoric that comes out of the White House these days doesn't mean anything to me any longer. Aoife, give me another call.
Yes, you have John from New Haven, Connecticut.
John in New Haven, Connecticut. Finally a Connecticut caller. Go ahead.
Mr. Galloway, might I say what a pleasure it is to be speaking with you this morning. How do you do?
Very well, sir. Thank you so much. By the grace of God, the sun is shining. The wind is blowing, but unfortunately it's not the wind of change yet.
Indeed. You spoke briefly in your last comment about a question that I have. However hypothetical, I am curious about your view, your take on what a Romney presidency might look like and its effect on movements such as the 99%, the Occupy movement, and the ongoing burgeoning concerns between the classes.
Well, I hope they're burgeoning. I've been doing my best throughout my life to make them burgeon. I hope they're burgeoning. It seems to me they've subsided a little. And definitely we are not the 99%. We are objectively speaking up for the interests of the 99%, but we don't represent the 99%. It's a fundamental flaw, concept error, that. First of all, most of the 99% does not see its interests lying with us. And until that changes, we're not going to make any real change to anything. Much of the 99% instead identifies with their own oppressors, with their own exploiters, with those who steal from them and send them off to foreign wars to die and bleed in foreign fields in the interests of the 1% who own and control the economies in both our countries. I think that Mitt Romney would be a world-class disaster as President of the United States. I think that he's in the Bush League for stupidity. When I see him standing there with that foolish, sheepish grin, smirk on his face as he wallows, for example, in the absolute license that he is giving to a lawless, rogue, criminal settler state called Israel in the last few days only, in visiting occupied Jerusalem, which the rest of the world recognizes illegally occupied and annexed territory. He declares that it's the capital of Israel when even the United States itself does not recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. In fact, nobody in the whole world recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, but Mitt Romney has promised so to do. When I see him blundering around like a giant with the mind of a child on his visit to London, I can only speculate as to what disasters lie ahead of us if this man gets his finger on the trigger, if this man gets his finger on the world's biggest economy, if this man gets his finger on the strategic power that the United States continues to hold. I find his religious views deeply inimical. I find his religious views deeply suspicious, and I find his messianic approach to the world, which is born from those religious beliefs, very frightening indeed. So although there is no one, trust me, on this earth more disappointed in Barack Obama than me, I'm hoping for a big Obama victory in November, and I pray that the second term will not be the miserable failure that the first has been. Where do you stand on that?
Most things that you say, I'm not only marveled by your prose, but also your accuracy. I fear deeply what kind of steps will be not only taken back in terms of whatever hope we had at creating stronger ties between not only allies, but maybe even some foes, and trying to create some sort of dialogue, not only between us and other nation states, but between other nation states themselves. I do fear that we could have done more, or that the president could have done more, but did not. However, I feel, how do I say, I'm not even sure that I would even know how to view what could happen should a man like Mr. Romney have full,
full power
to be able to do whatever he wanted to the markets, to the military, to the middle class. I can't even fathom what might happen, and that worries me.
Well, you've put it very, very eloquently yourself, my friend, and I'm very grateful for your call. You and I should work together. I do hope you hook up with me in Facebook.
However,
and
I
other
know you have
platforms.
work to do, so I thank you so much for your time and consideration of the
You're
question.
welcome, sir. You're welcome.
wish you
Thank
all
you
the
so much. Ife, do we have another call?
Yes, you have David. David from Brooklyn.
David in Brooklyn, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate talking to you and having the chance to express my views. There's three things I'd like to make mention of. The first two have to do with our NBC network's coverage of the opening ceremonies of the Olympics.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but during a segment when there was a tribute to the July 7th, 05 victims of the bombings in London, NBC decided to cut away to an interview with our Ryan Seacrest, kind of like a man who's been anointed as America's seems to be our goodwill ambassador, who interviewed our swimmer Michael Phelps. So we did not see the tribute to the bombing victims, and I was wondering. And also, by the way, NBC, the hosts on the show, they seem to be at great pains to explain during again the opening ceremonies why there was a tribute to the letters NHS, and they kept explaining that it's the National Health Service, but they didn't go into explaining why the Brits find that
the
very
NHS
dear.
equals communism. But there was Her Majesty the Queen presiding over an opening ceremony, part of the narrative of which was to exalt and hail the greatest achievement of the post-war Labour government, the creation of a National Health Service where whomsoever requires health care can access it at any time and free at the point of delivery, and equal health care. I just give you a couple of personal examples. Last night with my wife, I watched As Good as It Gets. You'll remember that movie, the Jack Nicholson movie. And the painter, the wonderful young painter, his next-door neighbor, is violently assaulted, and his life almost ended. But that was only the start of his trials and tribulations. He then discovered that he had no effective health insurance and was bankrupted, turfed out of his apartment, put onto the streets. So in addition to the grievous physical injury that he sustained, he was placed in absolute penury. And but for the goodness, as it turned out, of the Jack Nicholson character, that's where he would have stayed as a bum on the streets. And we were just marveling, my wife and I, at this, because, of course, no such thing could possibly happen in our country.
George,
and we are the perfect example. Just the week before, my wife, who's a foreign citizen, an Indonesian citizen, born and brought up in the Netherlands, but an Indonesian citizen, took ill in the middle of the night. And I had to drive her to the hospital. And we spent 7 or 8 hours in the hospital, receiving thousands of pounds worth of treatment and medicine and the greatest possible care without anybody even asking her address. Her address was immaterial.
Right.
Her status was immaterial.
George,
her finances were immaterial.
George,
all that mattered was that she was a sick person who needed help and got it. And by the grace of God and by the kind assistance of the health professionals there, she's made a full recovery. So this is one of the things that the opening ceremony was exalting.
George,
this great achievement of ours, this jewel in the crown of ours, which Obama has tried to make a pastiche of, almost a parody of, and yet that is regarded in the United States as communism.
Yeah.
What he has done is regarded as communism.
Can I make another point?
Go ahead, yes.
Yeah, London, when London was bidding for the Olympics, so was New York. And I could just imagine if New York had won the Olympics, you would imagine that during the opening ceremony there might be a tribute to the victims of 9/11. Now,
Indeed.
I wonder what our reaction would have been if the British television coverage tuned away during the 9/11 memorial to the victims to interview one of your star athletes. What would
we'd have to find a star athlete first to interview. That would have been more difficult in our case than it is in yours. But it's a wonderful point that you make, and it's one that I was going to address, but you've done it very, very powerfully, and I won't try to repeat that. The last point I'll make on what you said, and what's been a great call, is the right wing in Britain, the Romneyites, the Bushites in Britain, absolutely hate the opening ceremony of the London Olympics, because that London Olympics opening ceremony didn't just tell the truth about the National Health Service, it also exalted, maybe in an exaggerated way, but with the best of intentions, that which is good about our country, that it is a social democracy, that it is not a red in tooth and claw, dripping in blood from head to foot, capitalist savagery, but that it has some social meaning, some social fabric, and that it's multinational, multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-faith in character. And it showcased all of that, which you would have thought was the reason for the Olympic Games coming to London in the first place. But the right wing absolutely hated it, which is the reason, I guess, why I absolutely loved it. Thank you for that wonderful call. Aoife, do we have another?
Yes, you have Charlie. Charlie from Queens.
Charlie in Queens, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi there, go ahead, Charlie.
Yes, good day, Sir George.
Good day.
And I like the position that you take with respect to giving your views, your wealth of experience to the public.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yes, it is the 50th anniversary of Jamaica and Trinidad.
Congratulations. I didn't realize that. 58.
50th anniversary, Jamaica and Trinidad.
Congratulations to both countries and all their compatriots.
Yes, it should mean a lot to our people.
Mm-hmm.
But I need them to understand the false start that had taken place so that we can catch ourselves with respect to that as a people. And I need to know which Lord of England had said that the English is saying that with the abolition of slavery, the Indies is costing them a pretty penny. They will either have to throw referendum or independence in their laps, whichever will work. And it's a pity that none of the bright scholar, Manley or Buster, will be intelligent enough to negotiate economic independence with England. They will be taken up with being too power hungry.
Well, I think that the description that you make of the false start, which is represented by these independence ceremonies, is a very good way of describing it. It has been a false start. They ran down the flag of the United Kingdom, and they ran up the flag of the new republics. Well, in fact, they're not republics. The Queen is their head of state, as I recall, at least in Jamaica. And, of course, the historic ties between our two countries contain good things as well as bad things. We taught you cricket, and now you can play it better than us. You taught us some great music and culture, and you introduced a great deal in terms of color and spice in every sense into our lives. And I, for one, am very grateful for the presence of many people from the Caribbean in my country. But a false start is what it was, because neither of these two countries is truly independent. And I would go further, brother, this is more controversial, and say that neither of these two countries can be wholly independent. I don't believe that anyone can be wholly independent in the world, and the smaller the country, and the less in natural resource that it possesses, the less it can be wholly independent. What it has to do is find a comity of nations, a comity of peoples, based on mutual respect and equality, and work in concert with them. If the Caribbean countries, for example, had had Cuban revolutions at the time of the Cuban Revolution, or since, and we had in the Caribbean a community of societies based on a different set of premises to those that we actually do have, then I believe that everybody in the Caribbean would be far more independent than they actually are today. What do you think of that?
Well, there is some history that is actually lacking to the people. It's a semi-political independence, and economic independence was not negotiated. A lot of officials from both countries have walked out of meetings that have been discussed about reparations. Youths have been misled, thinking that the old heads did not put up a fight for betterment. So I think a fund, today is Emancipation Day in Jamaica. A fund should actually be started for reparations.
Yes, well, I'm with you 100%.
To show the youth how serious we are and how serious we have been about reparations for the youth, something betterment for the youth.
I fully support that.
And economic fund should also be started by all people.
Slavery was the greatest crime committed in a long line of crimes by my country and others. We owe you big time. Unfortunately, you can't cash it in now, even if the British government wanted it to, because the British government itself is bankrupt. Thank you, and congratulations to the people of Jamaica and Trinidad on the 58th anniversary of their independence. Aoife, do we have another call?
Yes, you have Gary from Long Island.
Gary in Long Island, welcome to the show.
Hello, Mr. Galloway.
Hi.
I would like to get your take on constantly voting, let's just say, for the Democrat because he's, let's say, better than the Republican.
Or less bad than the Republican.
Yes. Now, if you keep doing that, you're going to get exactly what we have now, which is the Democrats do not do anything that's in the best interest of the rank and file or the everyday Democrat, nor does the Republican do anything that's in the best interest of the everyday Republican, because they can count on their votes.
Yes.
And so they constantly acquiesce to the powers that be, which those political entities have to wrestle for their affections.
Yes.
So I believe in, basically re-electing no one. If you're an incumbent, you're out. And maybe having Mitt Romney as the president would be a very rough 4 years, and I believe that. But I think that maybe if we kicked Obama out and the people just showed that, you know what, we're not going to keep voting for you just because you're, Democrat or Republican, that maybe these people that would go into these positions would get the idea that, hey, you know what, we have to do what the common is in the benefit of the common people. What do you think about that?
Well, I profoundly disagree with it in the following respects. But first of all, let me say where I agree with you. This paradigm of Tweedledee and Tweedledum, or two cheeks of the same backside, cannot go on forever in the United States. And that's effectively what the polity is. It's two cheeks of the same ass.
I agree.
And we can't go on like this. But in November, you have a choice between A and B. There is no other choice. B is so obviously, demonstrably, more dangerously stupid and bad that it would be folly of unimaginable proportions to allow B to be elected. That's all I'm saying. I've said it at great length. I don't intend to adumbrate again all the reasons. I think you, in your heart, must know them. The idea that if you make things worse, people will stand up and make them better was belied even in the early 20th century. Lenin himself called it belly communism. The idea that we should wish for mass starvation amongst the masses on the principle that that will more likely lead to revolution is fundamentally flawed. Indeed, the opposite is true historically. So it would be a folly to wish further suffering, more suffering, worse suffering on the part of the people of the United States under President Romney. Never mind the folly of wishing it upon the rest of the world. It would be a folly to imagine that that could lead to anything good. So I'm very clear about this.
Yeah, but George,
in November, you have to
simply
defeat Romney,
delaying the inevitable?
That means voting for Obama. But after November, you're right. We have to get back to the drawing board on this show and in every other platform that we can, and anything I can do in a small way as a foreigner, I'm happy to help. But if we allow politics in America to be the left cheek or the right cheek of the same ass, then don't expect anything other than what comes out of an ass to be the result.
Yeah, but Obama, at that point, is going to feel, hey, you know what, I got reelected, just like that schmuck George W. Bush, and feel that, hey, I have somewhat of a mandate. I want a second term. And then the rest of the world is also going to see, hey, we want a second term. I just see it as being delaying the inevitable.
Well, I've got to put it this way in the inimitable words of the late Harold Wilson, former Prime Minister of Britain, about whom it was said of his rival, George Brown. Better George Brown drunk than Harold Wilson sober. Better Barack Obama drunk than Mitt Romney sober. Mitt Romney hasn't even tried Diet Coca-Cola, but he's a far more damaged and dangerous individual than the man that smoked the toke at university. That's my view. And this is the mother of all talk shows. This is George Galloway. This is WBAI.
Meltdown expected. The wheat is going big. Engines stop running. But I have no fear. 'Cause London is drowning. I live by the river. To the imitation zone. Forget it, brother. You can go it alone. London calling to the zombies of death. Quit holding out and draw another breath. London calling, and I don't want to shout, but while we were talking, I saw you nodding out. London calling, see we